there have been phases after the Shimla Accord of 1972 till 1989, but Modi's position is not so strong as it was earlier on. You talk about trade, that is very important. There is already a lot of informal trade taking place between the two countries.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to TGC. My name is Yasir Khan Kakar, and today we are going to discuss the current political dynamics between Pakistan and India. So for this very important topic, we have Dr. Salma Malik. Thank you so much, ma'am, for coming here.
Thank you, Yasir, for your invitation.
So, ma'am, starting from the very first question, as we know, okay, there is a stalemate between Pakistan and India. So, how you will explain the current political dynamics between India and Pakistan? As we know, okay, in India we have Modi new government, actually his third term, and in Pakistan we have P. Milan with coalition government. So, how do you see this? Do you see any future prospect between Pakistan and India?
Okay, thank you so much, Yasir. First of all, as you have mentioned, that there's a stalemate. At best, we would term such a conflict as a frozen conflict. There is no progress forward towards peace, although the conflict remains where it was. And unfortunately, with conflicts, even if we call them frozen, that doesn't mean that they remain frozen and nothing happens. As the time passes, a conflict situation deteriorates, because with time things don't get better. With time things sort of go towards the worse. However, they do not go towards peace. So one aspect of India-Pakistan conflict is that through these 70 plus years, now close to 80 years, India-Pakistan have faced different dimensions in their conflict. Some phases of goodwill, coming together, looking at some contentious issues. However, those windows have been very few and far between. Most of the time, either there has been active conflict, or if there has not been active conflict, then we see that there has been a stalemate kind of situation. And even there have been phases after the Shimla Accord of 1972 till 1989, or rather one would say 1986, when we had a crisis called the brass tacks between the two countries, that these two countries did not have any fight, the conflict remained frozen, but it did not really take the conflict in a negative direction. It just remained where it was. But then brass tacks happened, and then we see in 1989 there was some betterment in the relations, so on and so forth. But at present, this state of freeze between the two countries is leading both to a negative direction rather than a positive direction. As for your question regarding the change of governments or the new tenures, one in India where Modi has been awarded his third tenure, and in Pakistan we have a coalition government. The same would be true for India as well. There's a coalition government in India as well. But Modi's position is not so strong as it was earlier on. That puts him in a rather disadvantaged position, even if he wanted to offer peace, which doesn't appear to be the case in any case. But in Pakistan, we have from time to time, whatever the flavor of the government may be, been giving India indicators that we can have talks on contentious issues and make things better.
What if they are not ready to talk with Pakistan because they are having this strategic autonomy? So they think we are going to be the regional power, and Pakistan being a very economically fragile, political instability and social unrest, having these things in Pakistan, how you can influence them to sit, what do you have on a table with them? So
it takes two to tango. And it's not a question of India being ready or not ready. India has decided not to talk to Pakistan, right? So that question of India actually being ready, what does it require to talk to the other party? At least one can have a conversation, if not a commitment on important issues. But India remains quote unquote ready to talk to Pakistan only when India prepares sufficient ground, a lot of media presence to have talks, not to further the talks. So, whenever talks happen, there is a repeated pattern that we see that there is one terrorist incident, and in the last couple of years, whenever those terrorist incidents take place, they happen at any of the Indian military bases. Whether it is a naval base, it's an air force base, it's an army base, but it happens there. So it's a different type of a message that is being conveyed. And then the last in the game was Pulwama, which led to Balakot. Previously, it used to be civilian structures. So there's a pattern that has developed, and we can see what is happening.
And this pattern has been used for political purposes in India. Like if we look at their 2018 election, Modi used this Pulwama attack, like we will enter into Pakistan and we will hit them. They use this mantra for their political purpose. Then again in 2024 election, they use this mantra of terrorism. So like I don't see any good welcomings from their side. So how you are being so optimistic India will come to us?
I'm not being optimistic at all. If I conveyed this message that I'm being optimistic that India will come to us, what I meant to say was that if India gives an indication for talks, we should not take it with sugar and honey, because that means that there's going to be a lot of trouble, either prior to the talks or after the talks, and India will make Pakistan look like a bad boy of the story and themselves as the victims and the vindicated. So this is an unfortunate occurrence that is happening. So yes, there is unfortunately at the moment no appetite for conversation. There is no appetite for talks, because when we use the word talks, it always gives an impression that at the end of that conversation, it will lead to some meaningful process or some decision, which has never really happened, especially after 1999. But even if we think that there is any appetite for having a talk, it may not result in a very positive outcome. So we have to be quite prepared for that and quite careful about such a situation. And as I said, it takes two to tango. Then we also need to see that even if Pakistan gives this invitation for talks, there is nothing as such which India at this moment wants to talk about. They feel, they perceive that they have an advantage over Pakistan. They think that because of their acceptability in the global power dynamics, they're acting as a proxy to the US vis-a-vis China. So they have everything going for them, and that is why there's no need for talk. So yes, that could be an issue, but we also need to see what will we get out of such a conversation. We need to have some strengths and then seek a dialogue.
What about if we put aside all the problems, including Kashmir terrorism, and we just go for trade? As we know, our finance minister, foreign minister and deputy prime minister, he indicated many times we are going to trade with India. But do you think it is possible? Because we have many examples, such as China is trading with Taiwan and India is trading with China, having these territorial disputes. So how do you see this?
You see, between India and Pakistan, in comparison to India and China, there is an ideological rift which has been created by Modi. I mean, India was always, quote unquote, secular Hindu state. Pakistan was predominantly Muslim state, and that never was an issue. Till such time that Modi used this ethnic or religious card to make a very clear ideological rift when it came to the conflict fault lines. And to bridge that conflict fault line on the ideological grid has actually become very difficult, especially for India, because they have upped the ante of conflict so much that there's very little space or there's very little appetite now left in India for having a conversation with Pakistan. So they have become a victim of their own narrative in certain words. Secondly, you talk about trade, that is very important. There's already a lot of informal trade taking place between the two countries. Yet, having said that, formal trade has to happen bilaterally. You cannot have unilateral trade taking place. So if India feels that they don't want to have trade with Pakistan, we can't make them trade with us. Whereas informal trade and economy is hurting both the countries. But if they think that's a small price to pay, let them think.
So, how do you see the security concerns between these two countries? Pakistan was afraid that we have like anti-government in Afghanistan, that India can squeeze us from two sides. But we know that now there is a Taliban's government, so which is they know Pakistan. I don't know whether it's true or false, but it is very famous. So how do you see are there any security concerns between Pakistan and India? If you see,
Now, a bit on the trade, one additional line that I would say that none of the issues between India and Pakistan are isolated. They are all linked with one another. So you cannot say that we'll pick and choose. We'll leave Kashmir and all the questions aside on one day and trade. It's all interconnected. And you cannot sell out on your basic tenets and say that we can trade with so many people who have laid their lives for their motherland and let their sacrifices go to waste. Because if then we see trade has a very little value to pay. I know I'm sounding rhetorical, but this is how unfortunately the situation is. With China and India, it's not that way. One thing. About Afghanistan, this is a stretch of our imagination now. The Taliban are a very independent actor. They know what they're doing. They know how they're doing it. They have been given a chance by the international community, the same international community that condemns them openly. But it was the same international community led by the US which signed a deal with the Taliban and signed a deal with the Ghani government just to kind of appease them, knowing that this particular deal had zero significance with Ashraf Ghani. The main significance of the deal was with the Taliban. It's the same Taliban who had been nurtured, brought up, been courted, groomed in Doha. So don't think that Pakistan has much to do with that. They are an independent actor, they are an autonomous actor, they are doing whatever they need to do. Yes, we have a religious affinity, we have an ethnic affinity with them. They are a brotherly regime at best because we haven't yet recognized them. When the question comes to recognizing them, which is conditional, if it has to be that, it will go through. Do the Taliban do our bidding? No, they don't. None of the Afghan governments did, right? If it so requires, any of the Afghan governments, secular or religious, have used the Pak-Afghan border, calling it the Durin line against us, used the Pashtunistan card against us, so which is another story altogether. So we should not be in any kind of illusion that Taliban are doing our bidding and it's our fifth or the sixth province. None of that. If India invests in Afghanistan, the Taliban are very happy to do that. The Taliban picked New Delhi as one of the few choice capitals that they visited after they settled in Kabul. So Pakistan is under no illusion. Yeah.
So, coming to like international politics, you earlier mentioned China factor. So, I just want to know how do you see the strategic partnership between US and India? Do you see it's a kind of something threatening for Pakistan? Pakistan will choose China more preferably than the US because India is already in the US camp. So how do you see this?
To be honest, India is in no one's camp. They never were. They have been a very smart country. They pick and choose. When we thought they were in the Soviet camp, they were getting a lot of favors from India, from the US, and remaining non-aligned. They were never sanctioned as well. So it's a very smart strategy. Now that we feel that they're in the US camp, the US requires India because they think that in the Pacific Ocean, which to appease India and to make it a single zone of security parameter has been conveniently dubbed as Indo-Pacific. So the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean put together provide the US with a huge canvas to operate, to securitize, to look after, and for that they need their different minions, India being one of them. And for India, that's a great thing because it provides them the type of outreach which they singularly on their own could never achieve. I mean, no one would have given them an ingress into the Pacific Ocean if they said that I am the net security provider, because there are big countries in that area. But having that India US strategic partnership, the entire canvas of how the world looks at this particular domain becomes different. Primarily it is to counter China. Where does Pakistan fit in? The type of technology, the type of surveillance equipment, the type of weaponry, weapon systems which are being koshered for India, which are being provided to India, which are being manufactured in India, in order to make India counter China. Whether it will counter China when it comes to that point or not is another question altogether, is very concerning for Pakistan because it doesn't really say that this weapon is only and only made against China and not against Pakistan. And it comes to that, they will use Pakistan, they will use it against Pakistan. And as for the question that you had earlier about Afghanistan being used by India to squash Pakistan, yes, that's a very pertinent concern. And this is not Pakistan's paranoia. A lot of our Pakistanis think that whatever the Pakistani security perspective about Afghanistan being used against Pakistan by India is just a fabrication, a paranoia, and nothing of that sort is true. We have to think twice because every country does that. Every country uses another country as its security parameter. And in India's strategic thought, which is run by Chanakya Kautya's mindset, the Mandana theory, you must really be familiar with being a student of international relations, does say that enemy of my enemy is my friend. And you have to get into the encirclement. So the immediate encirclement, the immediate circle is one of your adversaries, and the circle next to it is that of your friends who are not friends with your adversary. So you work things accordingly. So you have to see that it is part and parcel of Indian strategic thought. So we have to look at that. China also falls into that mandala encirclement theory. And where India remained wary of the Soviet, previously its friend in the 1980s, and then the US entry in Afghanistan, because India always thought that this is our strategic neighborhood, it is very comfortable with getting all the equipment from India, from the US, and use it as in how it would want to use it. So yes.
So given this scenario, do you think US is treating Pakistan and India equally?
Not at all. Not at all. Pakistan at this moment is not significant for the US.
Yes.
However, unfortunately, if something goes bad in Afghanistan, Pakistan's relevance would come back.
So what if India is showing strategic autonomy, especially in the invasion of Ukraine by Russia? They didn't side any party. So don't you think US should realize that India will show its strategic autonomy in the time of crisis? So Pakistan should not be ignored.
Thrones is very, very, very complicated. What you are terming as strategic autonomy may also be dubbed as something different, right? India has made the choice that it has made. The US is tolerating it because the cost of this choice is much smaller than the cost of what India's requirement for the US in the larger strategic calculus is. And at the moment, because Pakistan is not relevant, so Pakistan would face the music. Back in the 1970s and 80s, when Pakistan was relevant, you know how the situation unfolded. Pakistan made some very strong, critical, strategic decisions, which, despite the US having a fairly strong idea about, they remained quiet. So this is nothing new. Today it's India, yesterday it was Pakistan, tomorrow perhaps it may again be Pakistan.
So what do you think about the potential pathways between India and Pakistan that can bring both countries together for the sake of regional stability?
Well, engagement at the civil society level is something that could happen. Some soft steps. However, the unfortunate reality is that even those apparently soft steps are not so soft.
For example, sports diplomacy, re-adoption.
There could be the health diplomacy, there could be sports diplomacy, there could be several other factors. The COVID provided both India and Pakistan with the opportunity to come together, but even that was ridden with politics and a lot of parochial thinking. So we love to make problems for each other. But there could be several avenues at the multi-track level, starting at very low scale and going up further. But even if you start at a low scale, you have to realize that there has to be a governmental nod or acceptance for small steps to take place. If that nod or acceptance is not there, then these aspects remain a non-starter.
So I think this will be last question. It will be about Kashmir after this Hamas invasion attack of this 7th October. I have read many times that people are comparing Israel with India. So they are saying Palestine and Kashmir, they both are the same case. Like both, they need self-determination, self-identity. So what do you think it's a good thing for for Pakistan, people are realizing what India is doing in Kashmir after when their case has been alerted?
Sorry for asking a counter question. Which people are we talking about? Are we talking about Pakistanis, Kashmiris, Indians, or the international audience?
The international audience, like they are, because the case is alerted in the Palestine, so they have compared this case with Kashmir. Okay, the same is going in Kashmir.
The unfortunate reality is that even what is happening in Palestine by the minute, which is a genocide and which is so tragic, is not being met with the same type of human rights response that it deserved. Right?
It was in Ukraine.
Or as it was in Ukraine. Much lesser. What is happening in Ukraine is nothing in comparison to what is happening in Palestine.
Not the international community, they alerted the Ukraine issue as there's a humanitarian disaster, but they are ignoring the Kashmirian cause and the Palestinian cause.
What she said about the people worldwide are very much alive to what is happening in Palestine. And I must appreciate more than the Muslim world. In the European, in the Western world, we've had people out in the streets raising slogans, chanting in favor of the Palestinians and shouting against or screaming against Israelis. Even in the US, some radical Jewish groups are condemning what is happening in Palestine or what is being done by the Israeli government, despite being Jewish. So this is something that we need to keep in mind. But has that really made the countries of significance do anything about it? No, it hasn't. Even the OIC hasn't done anything, right? I totally agree with you that there are a lot of similarities between Palestine and Kashmir, but that's about it. No two case studies are alike. Palestine was a country which has now been reduced to small ghettos. Kashmir was, the Greater Kashmir was a big riyasat, big state, which chose to side with Pakistan in terms of the people. Some of the portions of Kashmir, Gilgit-Baltistan, they offered their instrument of accession to Pakistan after seeking independence, which was extremely brave and big of them. Azad Jammu and Kashmir happened the way it was, and then the valley, Ladakh, Jammu, Aksai Chain, that's another aspect altogether. All of them have unique circumstances attached to that. Even prior to 7th October incident, the latest episode of Palestine, Netanyahu and Modi's several visits have actually brought about this question that why don't you Palestinize Kashmir? Do what I have done there. And we see that that's how Modi has been doing it, and Modi is much more smarter. Unfortunately, given how South Asia's dynamics at the moment are, Pakistan and then Kashmir are of not big significance to the world, so they don't really matter. Yes, Middle East is a big issue. If anything happens in Middle East, it creates a lot of hue and cry. So it's the strategic relevance to the world, and would the international community or the world order move the way they have responded to Palestine? I don't think so.
Thank you, ma'am,
Thank you
so
so
much
much.
for joining us.
Thank you for having me in your program.
Thank you.